Today, we are at the American Pigeon Museum. Now, I know that may sound crazy, but stick with me a minute. What I typically think of as flying rodents or disgusting birds, I found have quite the amazing story to them. I found they're quite interesting, and I've even found out that they were used in secret government missions. We're going to go inside and learn more about the pigeon. Let's see if we find it's more than just a dirty, disgusting flying rodent. Come on in, join me as we experience the pigeons today. So there are different types of pigeons. There's domestic pigeons, there's fancy pigeons, there's racing pigeons, and here's some pictures of what would be considered the fancy pigeons. Who knew there were so many varieties of pigeons? So here we have a pigeon feeder. So the way this works is the pigeons can poke their heads in and eat the feed that's in these. Down here we have water for a pigeon, a nesting bowl. So if you're raising pigeons, you would have one of these nesting bowls. Here we actually have a skeleton of a pigeon. Now over here we actually see a diagram of how a pigeon's anatomy works. Here's a more modern water bowl or waterer for a pigeon. And then a diagram of how the feathers are built and how the feathers work. So in one section of the museum, there's a video playing that explains a lot about the pigeon and their history. Did you know pigeons actually mate for life? Another unique thing I found in this video is that there are schools that raise pigeons that help troubled teens find purpose so that they can raise their pigeons, then they race their pigeons, and they have racing pigeons. And that is a whole fascinating sport where they will bring all pigeons to one location, let them go, and then track how fast they can fly home. And when they fly home, they have a tracker device on them. It's known that they got home. They can either be logged in, and the moment they get logged from the special tracker, or now electronic tracking, they'll determine how fast the pigeon flew. They'll measure it in mileage, so how fast did it fly? That way, every pigeon can go to a different home, but they can still track who the fastest pigeon was. Here we actually see them banding that pigeon so that if you find one, you would know who that pigeon belongs to. In the museum, there's also a back room that is the Pigeon Museum Library, and complete with Lifetime Achievement Awards. So in here you can come and study about how fascinating the pigeon is. For thousands of years, pigeons have been messengers during wars and conflicts. They provided the balance between victory and defeat in many crucial engagements, faithfully delivering their vital messages over large bodies of open water, through extreme climate of rain, wind, and fog, and even over high mountains. The First World War started as a European conflict in June 1914 and became a world war when the United States entered it in April 1917. It was during this time that the Americans began to realize what an important role the pigeons could play. The pigeon was successful in getting the messages through 95% of the time. The most famous pigeons used by the Allied forces at this time were the Mocker, President Wilson, Spike, Big Tom, Colonel's Lady, Kaiser, and Sure Amy, to name a few, donated by the pigeon fanciers of Britain for use by the U.S. Army Signal Corps. In France during World War I, Sure Amy flew many missions. His last mission saved the lost battalion of the 77th Division in the Battle of the Argonne, October 1918. On July 17, 1917, General John J. Pershing, Commander-in-Chief of the American Expeditionary Forces, sent a cablegram to the War Department in Washington, D.C., asking that 2 pigeon specialists be commissioned along with 12 enlisted experts and for the group to immediately proceed to France. With this cable came instructions to purchase 500 pairs of homing pigeons for breeding purposes and 1,000 young birds of the current year's hatch to be used with the American Army in France. And so begins the pigeon service within the U.S. Army. Here we see some pictures of how they would transport and house pigeons during war. Now, these pigeons, fascinatingly, could cross enemy lines. So what they would do is they would write messages on a little slip of paper and essentially attach it to like a vial on the pigeon's leg. And then the pigeon would fly to home with this message. And sometimes it wasn't even detected by the enemy. Sometimes it would fly through enemy lines. And sometimes when communication was cut off, the pigeon could get through with its message. And if we look right here, there's little silver tubes are what would attach to the pigeon leg, and the message would be in that little tube. Here we have a typical military display of what it would be like for pigeons. They would be carried in this trailer out onto the field. And then the Signal Corps would write the messages, attach them to a pigeon, and release them to carry the message across the battle line. Here we see a carrying box to carry a homing pigeon in. So I mentioned earlier that pigeons are used in racing even to this day. And here this sign talks a little bit about it. Pigeon racing is the sport of releasing specially trained racing pigeons, which then return to their homes over a carefully measured distance. The time it takes the animal to cover the specified distance is measured, and the bird's rate of travel is calculated and compared with all the other pigeons in the race to determine which animal returned at the highest speed. Pigeon racing requires a specific breed of pigeon bred for the sport, the racing homer. Competing pigeons are specially trained and conditioned for races that vary in distance from approximately 60 to 600 miles. Despite these lengths, races can be won and lost by seconds. The traditional method of timing racing pigeons involves rubber rings with unique identification numbers and a specially designed pigeon racing clock. The ring is attached around the bird's leg before being sent to race. The serial number is recorded, the clock is set and sealed, and the bird carries the ring home. When the first bird returns, its trainer removes the ring and places it in a slot in the clock. The time that the ring was placed in the clock is recorded as the official time that the competing bird arrived home. From this timestamp, an average speed is measured and a winner of the race can be found. The sport was introduced in the United States about 1875, although regular racing did not begin until 1878. The sport of pigeon racing is well established in the US and growing. According to the American Racing Pigeon Union, one of 2 large accrediting groups, there are 15,000 registered lofts in the United States. Although the sport is banned in Chicago, it was popular throughout the 20th century in the New York area, particularly Hoboken, New Jersey, and Coney Island, where it still has many devotees. So this is one of the early models of a tracking clock for the races. So they would set the time on this, they would seal the box, so that the person competing with their pigeon couldn't open it. And then when the pigeon came home, they would put the rubber ring in here, which would note the time that the ring was put in the box. And from there, they could determine the amount of speed or the rate of speed that the pigeon was flying. Since the rings were serial numbered, it was very difficult to cheat because the box itself recorded the time and it had to have the right serial number to count. This is a display of all the different types of clocks that were used over the years. Here we see jackets that would be worn by pigeon fanciers, pigeon racers. Pigeon racing is actually a worldwide sport. It was even an Olympic sport. This is a display of the different leg bands that would go on pigeons. So not the big ring, the little colored band is what would be attached to a pigeon's leg to identify that pigeon. Here we have a replica of a pigeon loft. This is a replica specifically of Charles Heitzman's loft where he would keep his pigeons. And inside there's like little cubbies where the pigeons would rest or roost or sit, or I don't know what we call it, but that's what they would do. Here's some pictures of the many different varieties of pigeons. As you see, these look nothing like the pigeon that you think of as the flying rodent that you see flying around or pecking at the ground in cities. It's amazing to think that the Rothschild actually amassed their fortune by using a pigeon to bring their transactions across lines faster. Before the postal service could get there, the pigeons could carry the message. Also, Reuters news agency essentially started because pigeons could move messages quickly, giving them the news the fastest. And today we still see this where news agencies are finding ways to make news faster and faster and faster. Even with social media, they're still racing to be the fastest news agency. And originally Reuters had figured out using pigeons that he could be the fastest. So much variety in these pigeons. Different colors, different necks, different sizes. These all look very well fed, however. Look at this one. It almost looks like a small chicken. Look at her strut her feathers like that.
She'll poop all over the place, but that's just what birds do. It's safe. She's vaccinated. It is still gross, but ooh.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Oh my God. All of the attitude. So proud.
She did my back earlier. Normally her feathers are not so pretty looking. But
She's so soft.
yeah. They don't have any oil glands like dogs or cats to keep them clean. They have a dust layer, so you're probably feeling the dust. Yeah. So when they like flap a whole lot, you can kind of see it come off of them. And then when they get in the water, you can see it come off in the water, but so derpy. And honestly,
The best pet pigeon.
she can't. And it's really a sign of, even the wild ones have this, it's like a sign of their health. If they don't have, if they're like sick or they're not eating well, they'll turn kind of chalky.
There's even pigeon merch. So what was your favorite thing in the Pigeon Museum? I'd love to hear your comment. And did you realize before this that there were so many different types of pigeons and that they weren't just flying rodents? Hey, I'd love to hear from you. Where should we visit next? Thanks for joining me on today's journey, and I look forward to seeing you on our next adventure.